The Buffalo Bills survived the Miami Dolphins in the wild card round by a score of 34-31.
You are now listening to the Watering Buffalo podcast with your hosts, Justin Goddard and Andrew Chang.
Bills Mafia, welcome into another episode of the Wandering Buffalo podcast. My name is Justin, and I will be your host tonight. And before we get started, everybody just take a deep breath and let it out. Stressful game. Definitely not the way the game was supposed to go, how we thought it was going to go. But the Bills do come away with a win. Just a ton to get into in this game. I'm going to have, I guess, a little bit of a different format to the show tonight. I'm recording this immediately after the game, and just a lot I want to talk about. So before we get started, I do want to say this episode is brought to you by 26 Shirts. If you haven't done so already, check them out. Tons of cool t-shirt designs, doing great work in the community. So you get some sweet Bills Mafia gear. You're also helping out the community. So check out 26 Shirts. Bills beat the Miami Dolphins 34-31, and this game to me was it was difficult to watch at times. It was kind of, I guess, reminiscent of some of the games that we saw throughout this season. A lot of the stuff that we've talked about throughout the year. We talked a lot about mistakes that were being made, and the team being good enough to overcome some of the self-inflicted wounds that we were having on ourselves. And a lot of people were operating under the thought that we get to the playoffs, that it's just different football. You get to this next level, that stuff's not going to exist. And we saw it on full display today. Just self-inflicted wounds keeping the Dolphins in this game, and honestly giving them a chance to win this game kind of right up until the end. To me, this was like watching two different games. The Bills came out of the gates, guns blaring, defense buzzing, the offense just moving without hesitation. You jump off to a 17-point lead, and the Dolphins are getting their field goals here and there. All of a sudden you have just mistakes that you've made that were kind of unforced errors that allow the Dolphins to tie this up right before halftime. Now the Bills do end up getting one more possession, pull a field goal to give them the lead going into half. But this team was straight dominating out of the gate, and then we saw a Josh Allen interception that gives Miami the ball back and gives them a chance to put points on the board. Now going into the halftime, maybe this is a whole nother subject for another day, but I like to really try to take my Bills fan bias out of things when I'm watching games. You can't convince me that Stephon Diggs catch before half for a touchdown wasn't a catch, and if that's not a catch, I don't know. I think the NFL needs to go back to the drawing board this offseason and really figure out a better way to define a catch. To me, that's, he gets both feet down in bounds. He has the ball, fully possessed. It's moving, whatever. It's in his possession, and he gets both feet down. Like I said, a whole nother topic for another day. But to me, that the easy eyeball test of that being a catch and a touchdown, and I'm not even saying this for just the Bills, I'm saying this for the NFL in general, something you might want to clean up because it's taken away from the sport. Like I said, unforced errors. We had another Josh Allen interception. This second one I don't put on him. There's some grabbing of Cole Beasley at the point of attack. Whether it's pass interference or not, we'll leave that up to debate. But Beasley's trying to come back to the ball. He's kind of getting grappled with a little bit, and the ball does end up bouncing off his chest and go to the defender. Now, was that the best decision with the football? Probably not. But we see Josh Allen put those balls into the tight windows all the time. It's part of, what he does great. This one ends up, kind of bouncing the wrong way. But then we also see the strip sack that the Dolphins, scoop and score on. We see, one that we were really fortunate on with the punt. Nyheim Hines, muffs the punt, and we end up covering it. That could have been another huge swing. We also have Josh Allen getting strip sacked in the pocket, and I believe it was Spencer Brown that was able to cover it up. But another turnover opportunity play that we're putting out there for the Dolphins. And in this game, to me, I got to give a little nod to Ken Dorsey here and what was happening out there. I think there was a lot of times in this game where, no, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be aggressive with a lead. You see what happened to the Chargers 2 nights ago. Kind of taking the foot off the gas and allowing teams to stay in it, and that's how you lose games. But also to that point, I remember saying early in this game, talking to my brothers, the shot plays are fun when they work, but realistically in a football game, you get like 5 decent opportunities at those a game. You might come away with 2 of them, on a good day for, an above average team. It's just not it's not a high efficiency play in the NFL. And we took so many shots this game, and it's not like the offense, wasn't able to move the ball any other way. Early in the first quarter, we were kind of doing the dink and dunk with Diggs. He had 7 catches, 114 yards, something like that in the first half. Most of it was done in the first quarter. And then he kind of disappeared, and we start seeing all these shot plays. At the time in the first half, our running backs collectively were averaging about 5 yards a carry. James Cook was averaging about 6, and Singletary was at 4 something. And, just not getting the touches. And in a game where you're up pretty big early and it kind of looks like you can pass at will, lean into the running game a little bit and make sure that passing game stays open. Like I said, you get like 5 decent shots at a shot play in the NFL, and dude, we had to have taken like 15 of them in this game. There was the possession where we get the ball. There's like 2 consecutive shot plays, both end up being incompletion. And then on the third play, it ends up being, when you watch it from the back angle, you see the lane that Josh Allen sees, and he tries to take off running, ends up getting sacked. Don't really have a ton of issue with that. It's a play that we see from Allen all the time. But when I'm looking at that replay and it looks like another play where there's just lots of deep routes called on that play, and it's kind of like going all in on every play. There's no like underneath running back drag routes, anything to get, some medium yardage. So it ends up being you take like 12 seconds off the clock and give the ball right back to Miami. You put Buffalo's defense right back out there. And that is something that I will give my tip of the cap to today. And I'm going to switch the script here a little bit. I don't want you to think I'm going to be, all negative this whole show. We did come away with a playoff win. That's great. All the old adages, it's hard to win in the NFL. I do think the defense had a great game, and I think the offense had some great moments too. Just think that we put a lot in front of ourselves to have to overcome in this game that we really could have avoided. As far as the defense goes, I thought overall they we had a pretty solid day on defense. Granted, they're playing a third-string quarterback, but the running game, you held Jeff Wilson to 10 carries for 23 yards. Jalen Waddle had 1 for 8. Tyreek Hill 2 for 5. In the passing game, Tyreek Hill, somebody that we've had our struggles with in the past, 7 catches for 70 yards. And then the next leading receiver is Selvin Ahmed, and he had 3 catches for 45 yards. Really able to limit Jalen Waddle, 3 catches for 44 yards. Obviously, he had a pretty monstrous drop early in the game that would have padded those stats a little bit. But when we look at the 31 points that Miami scored, they had 18 of those points off of turnovers. We had a scoop and score off of the Josh Allen strip sack. So all of a sudden, 25 of the 31 points were, kind of putting the defense in a bad spot. And this was another game where there was at least 2 times where the offense turned over the ball and the defense kind of holds firm and, forces 3 plays and then a field goal and don't really give up any ground, but they're already in field goal range. And one of them was the punt return that they, take back deep into our territory. So I thought overall, the score is really deceiving. I thought our defense had a great day. And, on the same token, I think our offense statistically had a very good game, just sprinkled in with some really inopportunity mistakes and turnovers. One more thing I want to touch on before we get to the break. When we come back, we'll kind of get into some of the nuts and bolts stats of the game and whatnot. But this was a really weird game to me, officiating wise, and I'm not even getting into calls and no calls and whatnot. I can't remember another game where there was so many instances of plays that should have been blown dead that kind of were allowed to continue, and it happened on, I think, 3 separate timeouts, and they were in like short sequence. There was one that Shaq Lawson was going unabated to Skylar Thompson that they just didn't blow dead. Fortunately, Shaq Lawson pulls up, but I mean, he could have absolutely crushed Skylar Thompson, and then because you let the play happen that shouldn't have happened, like are we talking about that as now a penalty on Shaq Lawson because he didn't pull up? There was the delay of game towards the end. Towards the end of the game, it was a 4th and 1. Miami's going for it, and I know they say, like, when we see the 0 on the screen at home, they look at the camera in the end zone, then they look back to the ball to see if it's moving. That was at 0 for a hot couple seconds, and they allow that play to happen. The Bills, stuff them for about a 5-yard loss, but then they call it a no play, and Miami gets a chance at the 4th and 6. Now, it ends up being a non-factor because the Bills stopped them anyways. Kyrie Elam with great coverage on the 4th and 6. But, I mean, you're talking a situation where, Miami kind of showed what their play was there, and the Bills were ready for it. And then Miami gets a chance to see what our defense is doing and adjusting, and you kind of let the play happen that shouldn't have happened. And like I said, there was 3 or 4 other instances where I just can't remember a time where I've seen so many plays in one game where it should have been blown dead, no play, and they even get aggressive with the whistle. They just kind of keep going till everybody stops, and just thought it was really freaking strange that this kept happening in this game. I don't have another explanation for it. I don't know what was happening there. I know it's not me seeing things because I've watched a lot of football and I've never seen this before. I will say that I would be fine with not having this officiating crew again in any of our playoff matches. So that's going to do it on this side. Stick around when I come back. We're going to break down some of the stats of the game, our player of the game, our tablet player of the game. Stay tuned.
Hey, this is Bills Vader. Now back to the show.
Welcome back in, and thank you again for joining me on today's episode of the Wandering Buffalo podcast. We're going to get back into it and kind of get into our position groups, what we thought of them this game. And today I want to start with the offensive line, kind of get into the offensive line and defensive line at the same time. I thought our offensive line really struggled today, and I'm not going to pretend like, Miami doesn't have a good defensive front. There's some question marks on this Miami team. A lot of it revolving around, third string quarterback. Some of the secondary being banged up this year. That front four defensive line unit they have, guys like Christian Wilkins, Jalen Phillips, Melvin Ingram. There's a couple of others in there. It's a good group up there. But I thought the offensive line really struggled today. And we're looking at a game where Josh Allen was sacked 7 times for 36 yards. The running game, I feel like there were some lanes open, but I feel like these averages for our running backs were also kind of bolstered up by a couple longer carries. There was a lot of them that were, dealing with contact right at the point of attack, right at the line of scrimmage. I thought it was kind of a weird day for the offensive line. Saw a couple of plays where there was just free rushers up the middle, and Miami, like I said, has a good front, but this offense is predicated on the passing game and Josh Allen, and I know he presents some challenges that other quarterbacks don't present when he's in the pocket, right? He's got a pretty slow, snap to throw release on the ball. And that's, part of what makes him great is being able to stand in there and move around in the pocket and wait for plays to develop, wait for people to shake free. It also makes it difficult to block for him because you see a lot of these quarterbacks, West Coast offense style, getting the ball out in like 2.5 seconds, and there's plays where Josh has it for 5-6 seconds back there, really trying to find something. So I think it's a little bit of a give and take on some of those sacks. I don't put all of them on the offensive line. It's hard enough to block these defensive studs for 2-3 seconds, let alone when you're doubling it. But definitely not the best game that we've seen from them. Overall, Josh Allen ends up 23 of 39, 352 yards. We had the two interceptions. We've already kind of touched on. Also 3 touchdowns. I'm calling it 4 because that one to Diggs was a touchdown. But hey, here we are. And that the first interception from Josh, they end up taking it back. Decent amount of yardage. That one I can't not put that one on Josh. That one was on him. But also watching the replay on that, he's got, players at his ankles on that one. He's under pressure. And you can see him kind of, stop the throwing motion right here. Not able to step through it. And you see it, the ball kind of just hangs up there. It doesn't have the arc coming back down and doesn't get the yardage that it needed. I think Romo said something on the play-by-play of, putting that on John Brown, only take these shots to Diggs. I don't think that was really a situation where if it was Diggs running the route, he would have been getting there either. Who knows? But that one looked more to me like, kind of an irresponsible throw under pressure. But even at that, I don't. It's hard for me because he has his guy. He has him one-on-one. It's a speed guy, and if he doesn't get hit, maybe it's a touchdown. I don't know. Ends up being a bad play, but the turnovers aside, pretty good numbers day for Josh Allen. Some untimely mistakes that end up costing the Bills. Able to pull it out in the end. Moving into the receivers, absolutely love to see this from Gabe Davis. I've been down on Davis for a few weeks. Boy, he showed up. He showed up in the playoffs, and he did all of the things that I've been looking for him to do. He did in this game. He made tough catches. The touchdown that he got is, the quintessential Gabe Davis ball above his head, getting the toes down. I think he even got, the third foot in on that touchdown. Just some of the stuff that we haven't been seeing from him recently. He ends up with 6 catches, 113 yards. Diggs, 7 catches, 114 yards. Down there, Khalil Shakir. I was glad to see him get some action in this game. 3 catches for 51 yards. Really wish he would have pulled in that one-shot play to him. Kind of bobbles it around as he's going to the ground. Would have been a great catch, and would have been just an absolutely great day for the rookie, getting some more opportunities. Cole Beasley gets involved, 2 catches, 35 yards. And the touchdown, obviously. Dawson Knox, 3 catches, 20 yards, and a touchdown. And then Quentin Morrison, Naheem Hines both get 1 catch. And what I want to talk about here is kind of the Diggs play in this game. And I kind of mentioned this a little earlier. The Bills came out guns blazing, taking shots, really targeting Diggs early and often. And, I know there's adjustments that go on throughout the game. But Diggs did pretty much all his work exclusively in the first half, and a lot of it in the first quarter. And I'm sitting here looking at, he's already got 7 catches, 114. Like, this dude's about to have a career day. And then just kind of disappears. And, I think part of that is Miami making adjustments to limit Diggs and, making Davis more available, and helps Davis step up and have a big day. Helps Shakir get some opportunities. But to me, even if they're bracketing him and really focusing on taking him out of the game, Diggs is that type of player for this team. The emotional leader. He gets people hype. You got to find ways to get him the ball. And do a wide receiver screen. Do some quick slants. I call a jet sweep for all I care. Maybe not a jet sweep. He's not the really yards after catch kind of guy. But do run plays to get him involved. The first thing that comes to mind for me is wide receiver screen. We used to see it run all the time with John Brown, the little tunnel screen. Give me that to Diggs to just manufacture a touch and let him try to create something after that. Love seeing how involved he was early. Would have liked to see it sprinkled in a little bit more throughout the game. And just kind of spread it out, get him up to 10 catches, 130 or something like that. Really keep him involved with the game. Touch on special teams quick. Tyler Bass, perfect today. The big thing, well, I guess Tyler Bass wasn't perfect. He did have the kick out of bounds. We've seen that a few times from him this year. Before that kick, he did have the ball fall off the tee. So I almost wonder if the ball was kind of blown off the tee again right as he was kicking it. I don't know. I've watched the replay. It's kind of hard to tell there. But we did have that special team snafu, and then obviously the Hines fumble. Tough catch for him to make, and I'm not going to dwell on this for too long. The Bills end up, getting the ball back there. Just an opportunity for a play that really could have cost us in the end. So glad to see that didn't end up going back to Miami there. Overall, touching on the defense, like I said, I thought the defense had a pretty good game, and look, they played well enough to have us competitive against most teams left in the playoffs. I think today was kind of a lot of offensive output that still at the same time put the defense in bad spots. But Milano leading the way with 10 tackles. He also had 2 sacks. Boogie Basham getting in there with a sack. Ed Oliver got a real key sack. Dean Marlowe coming away with an interception. Kyrie Elam with a huge interception to just about seal this game up. The last play the Miami Dolphins take, he's in coverage there and making a great play on the ball. He did come up a little hobbled on that play, so hopefully that's not something that can carry over into next week, because I thought he made some clutch plays at opportune times. The defensive front, I thought had a pretty good game. Another game where, this is the time of the year that we wanted Von Miller to help us finish out games. And boy, were there a couple times today where I'm like, damn, like a Von strip sack would be pretty sweet right now. Really give the offense the ball back for, one of their mistakes. Get it back to them. But I think the defensive line continues to play well in his absence. And, 4 sacks on the day, 2 of them coming from Milano on the blitz. I don't think is really indicative of how much pressure they got on Skylar Thompson. I think the Dolphins had a pretty concise game plan to be getting the ball out of his hands quickly. And kudos to Leslie Frazier. I think, he knew that game plan going in. And for the Bills being a team that we don't see blitz a lot, we saw an awful lot of blitzes today. Trying to confuse the young quarterback, give him different looks, players coming from different spots. And, that's the quarterback you want to take your chances on. Have him panic a little bit and not immediately replace the blitz with the ball. So I thought it was a good game plan going in for Leslie Frazier. Shaq Lawson, continue to love his play. He doesn't really show up on the stat sheets a ton always, but he just does a great job of containing the pocket, that kind of edge collapse pressure, kind of shrinking down the pocket, putting the pressure on the quarterback that way. I thought he had a great game. And then Trey White, I thought, had a pretty good game today. He was flagged for a holding, but he did get beat on the play to Waddle early in the game that Waddle dropped. As the game went on, there was another shot to Waddle that Trey White, sticky in coverage. The ball was a little bit underthrown, but Trey White gets in there, and Waddle has that catch. He's got it in his hands, and Trey's able to rake it out. So another week where we're kind of seeing Trey White getting back to form, and I think that bodes well going on in the playoffs. Some missed tackles out there, but that seems to be pretty commonplace for this team. And as we advance into the playoffs, I guess kind of where I stand with the Bills right now is I still have great optimism. I still think that this is a team that can win it all. But the team that I saw start the game today versus what we saw through the end of the game, I kind of got to a point where I was feeling like the Bills kind of played to their competition. And, these mistakes exist against the bad teams. And how many times this season have we seen, close games with bad teams that we just kind of let stick around? And we don't really see that sloppy kind of football when we're playing the better teams. And to me, after kind of like the first quarter and a half, the Bills were looking real relaxed on the sidelines. They looked like they were expecting to win, and Miami was out there looking like they wanted to win. And Miami wasn't really doing it in any, real decisive way. One way they kind of took over the game. They just kept chugging along and waiting for an error and then capitalizing. I'll tell you what, that worked this week against Miami. If you end up seeing the Bengals in the next round, you see the Chiefs, Jaguars, there's not really many teams you can get away with, having 3 turnovers against. And even at that, a game where you had 3 turnovers, you also had your defense give you the ball back twice on interceptions. They kind of bailed you out and got you a couple extra possessions. Turnovers from your defense aren't something that you can guarantee every week. So, I mean, if this is a game where the Bills turn it over 3 times and the defense doesn't get it back twice, I don't think we come away with this win. And that's stuff that's going to need to be cleaned up going forward in the playoffs, or this team is not going to win the Super Bowl. It's something that we've talked about a lot throughout the season, and my concern at this point is that we've just been talking about it, but it hasn't changed. And I'll say for myself personally, I had, kind of a belief that, McDermott's going to get them right for the playoffs. There's a different level of focus going into the playoffs. We're not going to see this shit in the playoffs. We saw it today. So that needs to get cleaned up, and it needs to get cleaned up quick, or it's going to be a tough episode next week. So hopefully they get that right. My Ken Dorsey Tablet Player Award this week is going to go to Mr. Ken Dorsey himself. I know it's kind of a player award, but we're loose with our interpretation. And to me, this goes back to what I was talking about early in the episode. Just a ton of shot plays and deep routes called. And I know we're playing Miami, and they have a banged up secondary. It's kind of the weak spot of their defense. That's fine. You can attack the secondary without every route being 20 yards down the field. You don't need to take 15 shots a game. Get the run game going. If you're going to be throwing it that much, keep that pass rush honest. Throw a screen or 2 into there once in a while. I mean, I'll have to look at the numbers again. I don't believe there was a single target to a running back in this game. Which to me, if you're going to have these shot plays dialed up, you have to have the running back in the backfield kind of check and release and kind of set down in the middle portion of the defense where, everybody just cleared out because you're going deep. I just thought there was too many instances where we're taking these shot plays. I think we found success on the ground recently. I would have liked to see a little bit more of the ground game involved. You're talking 22 carries combined between Cook and Singletary, and a lot of those come on the last couple drives as they're trying to finally milk some clock away. So I would really like to see the run game incorporated in throughout the game plan, and not just be this thing we use once in a while, and then when the game's pretty in hand, we're going to run it to bleed out the clock. You can't rely on Josh Allen to do everything for you every week. Gets it done today, and his 3 touchdowns outweigh his 2 interceptions. Got to have some built-in easy throws underneath stuff when you're calling that many shot plays. The Wandering Buffalo player of the game today is my guy, Kyer Elam. In there on limited reps today, he was kind of subbing in and out with Dane Jackson here and there. But he made the most of the opportunities he had. Like I mentioned, he had the interception, the huge pass breakup at the end of the game, and I believe there's another pass breakup in there. But he continues to impress me, even though he's not getting the full-time starting reps. At this point, I'm kind of accepting that they're going to platoon him and Dane Jackson. We'll see what happens there. But like I said, two huge plays in this game that Kaiir Elam had that really kind of sealed the win for the Bills. Tons of players that could be honorable mentions here. Talking 114 yards for Diggs, 113 for Davis, Josh Allen throwing for 352, 3 touchdowns. Milano 2 sacks. There's players all over in this game that were making plays that contributed to the win. But when all the chips were pushed to the middle of the table, Kaiir Elam came away with 2 gigantic plays to really seal this one up. So the Bills will be playing football again next week. Like I said, I'm recording this right after the Bills have played, so don't know who will be playing next, where we'll be playing, anything like that. Do know that they will be playing next week, though. What we don't know, somebody might be playing. Some big news out of one Bills drive this week. Micah Hyde and Jamison Crowder both being designated to return to practice. Whether or not they're going to be playing any upcoming games still remains to be seen. What a boost that would be to get those 2 guys back for this playoff run here. Who knows what kind of football shape they're going to be in. They've both missed about 3-4 months here. So who knows what they would look like. Who knows what they look like in practice if they're actually able to come back this year. But trying to win 3 more games to bring home the trophy, pairing Poyer and Hyde up for that stretch run, looking at teams like the Bengals and the Chiefs coming down the pipeline here, even the Jaguars with some of their weapons. I don't hate that idea. So we'll see what happens there. Hopefully, probably I'd assume by Wednesday or so we'll get an update on that. But hey, we'll see what happens. That's going to wrap it up for today's episode. If you've made it this far, please do me a giant favor. Like, share, subscribe, drop a comment, tell a friend, do all the social media things. Helps out the show immensely. Helps people, get a hold of this episode, and, that's why we do it. So I thank you for joining me, and we will see you next Monday, hopefully celebrating another Victory Monday. Go Bills!